Hi, I'm Joe Dante. Welcome to Trailers from Hell. This Week in Horror.
Hello, I'm Edgar Wright.
Hi, I'm Mick Garris.
Hi, I'm Joe Dante.
Hi, I'm John Landis, and you're watching Trailers from Hell.
Hello and welcome to another fabulous episode of This Week in Horror. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Robb, joined alongside the only other woman to call me a gremlin, because last week I was the only other man to call you mommy, so you can call me a gremlin. It works out perfectly.
You're a gremlin.
Miss Staci Layne Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking all things trash-talking trailers and talking trash trailers.
From hell.
From hell. All good things. We've got one of our favorite directors in the house. Joe Dante is here, as you just saw. But before we go any further, I definitely want to talk to you. There's one film that's out in theaters right now called Insidious. We talked about it last week. It is in theaters. It did do well. I'm telling you to go see the film. I saw it. Staci saw it this past weekend.
Yes. It's excellent. You should go check it out.
It's very, very good. And it is playing in your local movie house. That's what they call them, right? Movie houses?
Theaters,
Those
I believe.
two.
And cineplexes.
And cineplexes and malls and probably everywhere else. So you got to go check that out. Joining us again is our sidekick, our lovable undying carcass from Sideshow Collectibles we call Gary. And you're going to want to check him out because next week we're giving him away and you could win him. And you're going to want to find out how to do that, and we'll have information on our Twitter and everywhere else. So you could win Gary.
I could?
You could.
I thought I was ineligible.
No, you're not ineligible. Anybody can win. That's how crazy we are here. Anybody can win. So with that, we are going to kick it off right now with the man of the hour, Mr. Joe Dante is in the house, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Joe, you could win Gary.
You could win Gary.
Do I want Gary?
Yes.
Of course you want Gary.
Okay.
What
would you do without him?
That's true. That's true. He is our third leg. I don't know what we would just topple over without Gary. So we are talking Trailers from Hell and all things trailers. We're talking the art of trailers. Now, this is something that comes close to your heart. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started making trailers. Some people would call it a lost art. The kind of trailers that I used to like were the ones from the 50s and 60s where they had all the hyperbole and the letters swirling and all the impossible claims that couldn't possibly be true, that this is the greatest, most exciting thing you've ever seen. And, after a while, audiences copped to that. And so advertising came in, and, advertising firms, and they came in with their research and plans. And all of a sudden, trailers started to become a little bit more sophisticated. And there are some great trailers. I mean, if you look at the Kubrick trailers, for instance, which he did himself, they're phenomenal examples of trailers. And filmmaker-made trailers tend to be a little more interesting than advertising agency-made trailers. And if you look at the Hitchcock trailers, or even the William Castle trailers, there's a unity to those things that expresses the mind of the filmmaker. Whereas some of the other trailers they're basically, I know because I used to do them. I mean, basically what you used to do is you just try to find all the pieces of the movie that look any good and try to stick them all together, for 2 minutes. And sometimes it involves misrepresenting the movie if the movie isn't particularly action-packed or isn't really maybe even that good a movie. You try to find enough pieces to put together to make people think that things are happening that maybe don't really happen in the movie, but they look like they do.
So there is a recipe out there for a perfect trailer, a very good trailer.
Well, there used to be recipes, but now most trailers are not made by one guy. The old saga, one man, one trailer, did not actually start with Frank Capra. The idea was that you actually made a trailer and you were the author of the trailer. But now that most of the trailers you see are the products of various different trailer houses, which have been hired by the studios to do a trailer, and then they put them all together. Oh, I like this part from this one and this part from this one. And they sort of become this amalgam. Whereas a really good trailer is like cinematic haiku. It's like it's a rumination on the movie. And sometimes the trailers can be better than the movies in terms of just, expressing in a very short way something that takes a movie 90 minutes to do, but in a good trailer can be done in 2 minutes.
Right, now you've gone through trailers that are worse than the films and trailers that are better than the films and just trailers in general. Like, is there one in your travels and in the things that you've seen for Trailers for Hell, is there one that depicts the movie perfectly that you can come across, you can think off the top of your head?
Well, there are some trailers for movies that are very accurate. We have one tonight. Edgar Wright has a commentary on a trailer called Corruption for a movie called Corruption, which Peter Cushing was in. Not one of his higher end efforts. But the movie itself is remarkably sleazy, and the trailer, which is really well put together and has great color and great graphics, manages to collect all of the more bizarre moments of the picture and sort of compress them into a movie that's basically advertised as it's not a woman's picture. And one of the reasons that we got into this Trailers from Hell thing was that I used to make trailers, and I also used to collect trailers in 35 millimeter. And when I first came to Hollywood, there was a theater on La Brea where at midnight people would bring their prints. There were a lot of film collectors, and they would bring their prints, and people would line up and they'd get in for free. And they'd do a midnight show. And very often the midnight show was nothing but reels of trailers. And there's a sort of a mind meld that happens after you've been watching trailers for about an hour and a half. You just go into this different place. It's a kind of being stoned that you can only get by just feeding yourself with all these rapid fire images. And some of the trailers that we used to run were just great. I mean, there's a trailer which we don't have on our site because we haven't been able to find it. There's a trailer for a movie called Hot Blood with Jane Russell. And the ad line for it, and Jane is, doing a big shimmy, and the ad line is, Jane Russell shakes her tambourines and drives Cornell wild.
That's fantastic.
That is great. I love your term, remarkably sleazy. Now I'm gonna work that into conversation at some point. So, yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. But now, what makes for a terrible trailer? Because I'm curious. I've seen some bad ones, but what am I seeing when I see a trailer that's no good?
Well, the big sin that trailers make is that they're too long. A really bad trailer will give away so many things that are in the movie that you feel like you've seen the picture. And these days there are really a lot of trailers where the people behind the movie say, no, more explosions. Put more explosions in. And as we all know, that famous image of the guy running away from the fireball, it's
not affected at all. Just walking away. Yeah,
it's like it's iconic now. I mean, it's like that shot's in it, I don't want to see it. There's certain kinds of music cues that are tip-offs in trailers that the picture isn't working and they're just putting this music in, which is not in the movie. But it's really a subject for study. I mean, I think there's been very little scholarship really about trailers and how they were created and how they've changed over the years. And the history of trailers is very much the history of advertising.
Do you remember what the first really bad trailer that you saw was that stuck with you, like the worst trailer that
Well, it wasn't that it was the worst trailer, and we do have this one on the site. There was a movie called The Giant Claw when I was a kid, and it was advertised as a scary flying monster movie. And in most respects, it was just an ordinary flying monster movie, except for this one flaw, which was that they had designed this monster to look like Beaky Buzzard from the Warner Brothers cartoons. And it was hilariously stupid. And they kept it out of the ads. They didn't have with the press book and the posters, they would cut off the monster so you didn't see his face. But nobody told the trailer department. And as soon as the trailer comes on, they have this shot of this screechy bird with this big beak and puppet strings. And it just sort of gives the game away,
That's great.
Now that's obviously not misleading, but I'm curious to know what's the most misleading trailer that you can think of? Because sometimes I see a trailer and there's this scene in there, and then I go to the film and it's not in the movie.
Well, when I worked for Roger Corman and I was doing trailers, one of my favorite things to do was to put in scenes that had been cut out of the movie.
That's
mainly for posterity. This should be seen. This should
Still
be kept.
Get to show it. Yep.
But more often it was because the movies really weren't that hot, and what we would try to do is we would try to make people think things happened in the trailers that didn't really happen. And so we found this exploding helicopter from a Filipino movie, which was a miniature, and it wasn't even a particularly good miniature, but it was an exploding helicopter. And we realized that if there was a dull spot in the trailer, we could pep it up by cutting to the exploding helicopter. And in those days, the movies were released they were TV spots that sold the movies, these kind of pictures, and they would inundate a neighborhood with TV spots for one weekend. And then the people would go see the movie, and by the time they came home, they'd stopped running the TV spots, and maybe they'd forgotten that there was no exploding helicopter. And by then, the movie had moved on to another town. And so we got away with the exploding helicopter in a lot of pictures.
That's funny. I'd actually like to see the exploding helicopter in my favorite horror trailer, Magic. That could work, right?
Yeah,
Just
well,
throw 'em in there
I
with
think
that.
Best Years of Our Lives needed a couple of exploding helicopters. I mean, it's, that and Giant Spider. I've never seen a movie that couldn't be improved by the addition of a giant
That's right.
spider.
That's true. That's definitely true. So let's take it back. We've got a slew of great trailers from hell tonight. Let's kick it off with our first one that we're showing you. Take a look at The Innocents, then we'll come back and talk to Joe's about some more stuff.
You're not looking at The Innocents right now.
Hi, welcome to Trailers from Hell. I'm Joe Dante. One of our mottos here at Trailers from Hell is that even a bad picture can have a good trailer. Well, also, a lot of times, a really great picture can have a lousy trailer. And this is one of those cases. This is the trailer for 20th Century Fox's release of The Innocents.
There has never been a ghost story.
Well, obviously, nobody knew what to do with this picture. The Innocents is a brilliant ghost story written by Truman Capote and William Archibald from the classic Henry James story, The Turn of the Screw. Jack Clayton directed it. It is a brilliant piece of filmmaking. The acting of Deborah Carr is magnificent. It's probably her best performance that I've ever seen. It's a layered ghost story. It's chilling. It's hauntingly photographed by Freddie Francis, who invented the Francis filter. Which was a way of vignetting the edges of the frame since they only discovered they were making the picture in CinemaScope just before they went into production. But someone at 20th Century Fox decided that this picture, which is obviously aimed at intelligent people, should be marketed to slack-jawed droolers. And so this trailer is filled with these awful hyperboles and echoey voices that completely obscure the fact that this is probably the best ghost story ever filmed. And the trailer certainly did its work because it kept people away in droves. Here's Michael Redgrave in a part that Cary Grant actually almost played. And if they had added one more scene for him, he would have played it.
Who, miss? The same man, the man on the tower. The tower? But now, just now, he was staring past me into the house as if he were hunting someone.
This picture is a must-to-see in widescreen. It's one of the great CinemaScope movies. And it's, if possible, if it can be seen in a crowded theater, it's all the better, because it really is a spine chiller. And it's not, the Robert Wise's The Haunting has a somewhat more inflated reputation, but to me, between the two, this picture is much creepier. And the kids, this little boy is Martin Stevens, who is the same kid from Village of the Damned. It gives a really amazing performance for a child, and Jack Clayton discussed what he told him and what he didn't tell him, and considering the fact that I don't think he probably understood what was going on, it really is a remarkable performance and a great movie. Unfortunately, it's a lousy trailer.
A new and adult motion picture experience.
Wow. So it's kind of like the little scream at the end.
Yeah, great stuff.
I'd like to point out a continuity error
Uh-oh.
in the wide shot.
Oh, this table manifests on its own. It just appears.
It's the table from hell.
It is. It appears. It appears.
Now, I'm curious to know, I'm sure that you've been asked this many times about starting with Roger Corman, but do you remember a specific trailer that was your favorite one to cut for one of his films?
Favorite trailer? Well, you know, we cut a lot of women in cages kind of movies and a lot of horror pictures and jungle movies, and they were all basically exploitation movies. But at a certain point, Roger started distributing classy foreign films. And so, you know, one day you were editing Women in Cages, and the next day you were doing Fellini's Amarcord. And of course, even the art pictures were done in the kind of lurid style that we did the other pictures. And,
Was there an exploding helicopter?
No, we didn't put the exploding helicopter into Amarcord, but Fellini did like the trailer. He thought it was better than the Italian trailer. Now, it could be because there were so many breasts and so many buttocks and stuff in it, but it was encouraging for, you know, a young film guy to have Fellini say that he liked your trailer.
That would be, yeah.
Wow, we actually have a clip. We have a clip of you and Roger actually editing together, so let's take a look at that.
And So what we did was we tried to make a movie that if you didn't like this scene, there's going to be another one that was totally different 2 minutes later.
Hollywood Boulevard brings you haunted castles, skydiving, water sports, future shock, axe murders, crime in the streets, green meatballs, pink monsters, girls in bikinis.
It's a real low-budget picture, you know what I mean?
Raw emotion, and Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen.
You can hear those dancing feet, see the people everywhere they go. You can see them singing howdy-ho.
We did this under the guise of a movie-making plot, and the girls go to the Philippines and they shoot Filipinos out of trees. The Filipinos falling down are from another picture, but we went out to Malibu and shot the starlets with machine guns firing away.
10 days. 2 units, 10 days.
No waiting. 2 units, no waiting.
2 directors, no waiting. I did 1 unit, and Alan did another, and when I would be shooting a scene with somebody who was talking, let's say Alan would be shooting a scene with somebody shooting a machine gun. And all we would do is we would have little walkie-talkies, and as soon as I said cut, Alan would shoot his machine guns off. And as soon as he was finished with his machine guns, by then we probably had a whole other setup, and we would just go ahead and shoot another scene.
And the actors...
Typical way of making a Hollywood film? Or
No. It's a typical way of making a really cheap Hollywood film.
Yeah.
This is one of the cheaper Hollywood films lately, I think. I don't think there have been any since.
In
Maybe
fact,
The Hideous Sun Demon might have been.
Roger said it was the best 10-day picture of the decade.
What this film led to for us was
a lot of experience
and more trailers, which we are still here in the trailer department, plugging away, using all our knowledge that we learned making this feature.
I need to correct myself, actually. Roger Corman is in the room, but you don't actually see him in that shot. He's
How did
filming.
you know that?
I just know.
He wasn't even in the room.
No!
Joe.
Joe. One of these days. No.
Now, with all this experience that you had in cutting trailers, what did you bring from that to making your own movies? Were you thinking trailer while you were shooting actual films?
Well, Alan Arkish, who was playing Roger Corman in that,
yes.
that clip.
Beautiful job, by the way.
And I were the trailer department, and John Davison, who had come out here before us and was working in publicity. The three of us had known each other back east, and we, of course, always wanted to make movies. And we got Roger to let us make a picture if it was the cheapest movie that had ever been made at the studio. And we had to shoot the movie in the daytime and cut the trailers at night because he didn't want any interruption in the flow of trailers. So he said, you can have 10 days and you get $60,000 and see what you can do. And we figured the only way we could make something that could actually be released is to take action scenes from previous pictures that we were familiar with from doing the trailers and write a story around it. So we did a story about a movie company, Miracle Pictures. If it's a good picture, it's a miracle. Making cheap exploitation pictures. And there's a murder on the movie set. That was as much plot as we could fit in.
Stops right
and
there,
the crew played a lot of the actors, and we dressed the actors like people in the clips from the movies that we had. And if somebody shoots a gun in Griffith Park and somebody falls out of a tree in the Philippines. It was that kind of a movie.
That is so meta of you, Joe.
It was very meta. It was very meta. But it was a great experience. We can't remember much of any of it because it was so fast. But you learn a lot of things, what not to do. And the great thing about the Corman School, if that's what it is that you had the freedom to make mistakes. You had the freedom to fail. Because if you make a movie that's guaranteed to be an exploitation picture, as we all know, sometimes they're really not so hot. Mm-hmm. But they get released anyway. And so when you're working for Roger, if you make a picture that's not terrible, people started to notice that, hey, this picture's a little better than the usual kind of stuff that comes out of there. And we were given a tremendous amount of freedom. I mean, provided that we gave the exploitation ingredients that were needed, and one bare breast every, half a reel, and one murder every couple of seconds or whatever. He really pretty much left you alone. And so people were actually free to develop their own styles.
Interesting. Now, would you say, I mean, working on a 10-day project is insane by today's standards, but would you say you take more pleasure in cutting trailers or working on something like that? I mean, you seem to have a real passion for trailers as a whole.
Well, it was fun cutting trailers, but it always seemed to be a means to an end. I mean, nobody wanted to be cutting trailers when they were 70, I mean, they think, I would like to make some movies. And this was, Roger's conduit was at the time, particularly, the best way to get in the movies because it was non-union and anybody could do it. If you wanted to go the union route, then you had to take a low-paying job and you had to work your way up. And here you could literally do all the jobs on a movie. If you work on a couple of movies, you could do sound, you could do lighting, you could do whatever. And a lot of people found, while making these low-budget pictures, what they really liked and what they were good at. And some people who started out thinking they were going to do one thing found that they liked doing something else better. On my first movie, a number of people switched jobs during the picture just because they found that they liked better what somebody else was doing, and that person liked better what they were doing. And so it was literally like film school.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So we are talking trailers, and we have one more trailer from hell. This one commentated by Guillermo del Toro. So let's take a look at Dead and Buried, one of my favorites.
Hi, I am Guillermo del Toro, and you're in Trailers from Hell. I'm about to introduce Dead and Buried, 1981, Gary Sherman. And this is one of the 3 movies, count them 3, where I utilized a fake mustache to be able to buy the tickets because of the rating. The fake mustache was horrible. It was made out of a piece of a fake male hair chest. I don't know why they sold it in the wig store, but they cut me a little swab, and I put it on top of my... It was like a fake Errol Flynn mustache. It matched my hair color somewhat, but it had a thick latex layer on the bottom. I don't think I fooled anyone, but perhaps the ticket seller thought the fat boy was deranged enough to attack her because he had a piece of plastic glue with some curly hair over his lip. So whatever. I got the tickets for this, Holocaust 2000, and the Attack of the Eyeless Death, Attack of the Blind Terror. And, this movie really was a landmark for me because the mustache worked, but the movie also worked.
This is the road to Potter's Bluff.
I remember exactly where I was and what cinema I was when I saw this movie, and I think the trailer encapsulates exactly what I love about it, which is presenting the facade of a normal town, a middle America, sort of Norman Rockwell-esque, and then gradually but brutally tearing it away. I mean, Gary Sherman had done a fantastic movie called Raw Meat or Deathline, which marked my childhood, if you can imagine what kind of childhood I had. And I was very, very interested in seeing this movie because of him. I was probably the only guy that showed up not interested in seeing it because it was done by the same creator of Alien. I came out for Gary Sherman. What I think Gary does is he has an incredibly perverse sense of humor, and he knows how to do very graphic stuff, very brutal stuff, with a very strange sort of artistic sense. He had a sense for finding the beautiful in the horrible, and the trailer shows this, which is a pivotal scene in the movie, a very famous scene that is sort of a riff on Polanski's The Tenant in a very brutal fashion. And he was aided in the making of this movie by Stan Winston, who does some terrific brutal effects for it. And I think the trailer shows you just enough to entice you, but I urge you, in Spanish and in English, to go see this movie and see the trailer, of course, again and again. Vean la película.
Dead and Buried.
And that's just a taste of what we've got for you tonight. We actually have another guest in the room, another continuity error, if you will.
Oh, she's not an error.
No,
Come on.
nobody is an error, no. We have a producer at Trailers from Hell, Miss Elizabeth Stanley is in the house.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hey
Thank
there.
you for joining us today. Now, I have to ask, how did the concept of Trailers from Hell get started? Where did that come from?
Well, Joe had an incredible collection of trailers, and we really shared a older movies that we knew weren't being run on television very much anymore, and we thought, wouldn't be a great way to get this stuff out. And then we met a guy named Jonas Hudson who was working in the mobile space in 2007, and we put our heads together and thinking we might want to do something together, and came up with, why don't we put Joe's movie, Joe's movie trailers on mobile, and why don't we ask some of our friends to talk about the trailers that influenced them? And initially it was all going to be horror, sci-fi.
And it's since branched off into more mainstream.
Exactly.
Well, if we'd done only horror, we probably would have run out by now. I mean, and it's also, it depends on the availability of the trailers. I mean, I had a lot of them, but I didn't have all of them. And there are some trailers that are very hard to find. There's some movies we've been looking for trailers for years, just because people want to do commentaries on them, and we just don't have the trailer.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, every trailer may be the same, but in their own separate with the commentary, they're different. Have you ever done one trailer for two separate guests? I mean, they may have a totally different take.
We have done that a couple of times.
We have. A couple of people have come and said, have you done, for instance, High Plains Drifter, which is a ghost western with Clint Eastwood. And I think Josh Olson, screenwriter, asked us, and I said, yeah, Edgar Wright already did it. And so we showed him Edgar Wright's version. And he said, well, is it okay if I do it over? And so I said, sure, why not? I mean, we've now been on for long enough that we can actually, run a new version of a trailer we've already done, and nobody goes, hey, wait a minute, you're recycling the same material. And also, it's kind of interesting. We even flirted with the idea of doing 1 week, we have 3 trailers a week, of doing all the same trailer that week and just get 3 different commentators.
That'd be great.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Because one of the features of the site is that you get to see the commentary, but you can also run the trailer without the commentary. So you can actually see the original trailer. And with a trailer like Psycho, for instance, where Hitchcock takes 7 minutes to walk around and show you the set and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when John Landis did his commentary, the first thing he said on it was, he said, listen, you really have to listen to this without my commentary, because it's a great trailer.
Wow.
Yeah, the other thing that might be interesting to note is that the website was really an afterthought. We thought this was going to be a new media mobile series, but as it turned out, the mobile platforms hadn't really matured enough to run video easily back in '07 when we started. So we built the website as a just in case, and that's in fact what ended up.
Way back in '07? Can you remember that far back?
It's hard.
Well, we're almost up to 600 trailers.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes, the site is very dense. I'm curious to know though, like how much is in the public domain, and do you have to get rights for some of the trailers that you have on?
The question of fair use is the one that everybody's talking about as far as copyright goes, and anything before 1978 is generally considered to be in the public domain.
Trailer-wise.
Trailer-wise. And there are certain trailers after that that are also in the public domain, because there are movies that are in the public domain. But the issue really is that these are promo films. These are advertising films. And anytime one of them is run, it's a promotion for the product that you're selling. So we decided early on that we wanted to put a link on our site so that you could watch the trailer, and then you could click a button and you could buy the DVD on Amazon, or you could buy the poster from Movie Goods.
Right, or sometimes you can buy the DVD from Shout Factory.
Yes.
So, yeah. So and the other thing is, because really what we're doing is a sort of a form of sort of film criticism, but not in an academic sense.
It's like a mini film school.
It definitely falls under the fair use guidelines.
That's great.
And you could actually, I think, program a class with these, because you not only get to see the original trailer, you get to hear somebody's discussion about it, what it meant to them, what they think of the movie, how it influenced their work, as many times it did. And then you could actually use that as a springboard for discussion, and then you could run the movie. So, I mean, if there are any enterprising young teachers out there who want to start a class,
there it is. Yeah. Now, do you find it difficult? I mean, a lot of these directors, I'm sure, would love to talk for more than 3 minutes about certain projects and certain trailers. Do you find it difficult trying to narrow everybody down into the space of that trailer?
We do, and particularly when we started, what we always say to people is, look, we're not going to tell you what to say. You can say whatever you want about the trailer. It would be nice if it fit into 2.5 minutes, but just say what you want. And then we usually edit the material down to fit the trailer. Sometimes to the detriment of the commentary, sometimes not. Then recently we've been experimenting with having longer introductions.
Like Guillermo del Toro's chest hairs.
Chest hairs. Brian Trenchard Smith likes to get very analytical in his trailers, and so some of his opening discussions are quite long. We had Jonathan Kaplan on talking about a picture called Mr. Billion, and he had so many cool stories to tell, and the trailer was only 30 seconds long.
Wow.
And so we just said, go for it. Just tell the stories, and we'll illustrate them with pictures. And so we have this little short subject. So there's no real hard and fast rule for any of it. It's just whatever works.
And it does. It absolutely does. I mean, I visited the site many, many times. I've watched them. I mean, once a week I see your Twitter. You guys are up on Twitter,
yes.
Trailers from Hell.
We do Twitter. We do Facebook. Thankfully, I don't have to do it because I'm such a Luddite. But we have Danny and Mark who take care of all that stuff for us. And we're, it would be nice to make some money from it someday, but it really has been kind of satisfying.
But do tell all of your friends, friend us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and that will help ensure that there continue to be more Trailers from Hell in the future.
Of course, of course. Would you say that there's one or several directors that you have like on a dream team list that you'd still want to get today?
Well, we've been pretty lucky. I mean, we've gotten a lot of people that some of whom have come to us and said, "Gee, I'd like to do one." I mean, getting Guillermo was quite a coup. Eli Roth, people like that. Edgar was one of our very first people to come on, and yeah. Well, I mean, I've often told Quentin that you'd be great for Trailers from Hell, and he's always enthusiastic and he's always excited about doing it, and then he just doesn't get around to it. But we're still hoping.
But yeah, and we are judiciously working on getting some other people onto the site, and we have some filmmakers from abroad who definitely want to participate. We have some New York-based filmmakers. It's really just a question of if we can travel there.
We don't like fly people out.
Yeah,
it's like basically
to the Trailers from Hell
studio. Are you in town? Do you have a half an hour?
You need an exploding helicopter to get these people in.
Exactly.
Now, if you could have any dream director who is no longer with us, who would you resuscitate and bring to life to commentate on a trailer?
Golly, that's a good question. I can't imagine. I can imagine John Ford chewing on his handkerchief. That's a very, very good question.
It's kind of leading, though. You could have said James Whale. See?
I could have, but I don't know. I don't know what he was like personally. I don't know what he would be. I mean, you'd want somebody acerbic. You'd want somebody who's really like Billy Wilder. I think
that would be great, wouldn't it?
Or somebody like that could really just come out and say whatever it is he wanted to say about the trailer. Sometimes that's another thing. We have people talking about other people's pictures, but we have a lot of people talking about their own pictures. Roger Corman has come on many times and talks about his own movies that he made, and that's an interesting and different approach, because those trailers are always a little different, those commentaries, than when they're talking about someone else's work that they either love or sometimes don't.
Yeah, I wonder what the sort of the political correctness is of that when you're talking about a trailer that you may not like the director.
Well, people have been pretty frank.
Yeah.
I mean,
check out Larry Cohen's
entry on Marnie.
Yeah, we won't repeat it here.
Larry knew Hitchcock, and he did not like the movie, and he goes on and on quite eloquently and interestingly about why he doesn't like it and why he thinks it was a mistake to make it.
Right. But one of the things about the site is it's never been about being snarky. It's been about pictures that influenced you to the positive or made you realize that that was not what you were going to do.
Yeah. So. Do you find it more difficult? I mean, there's a lot of companies out there, more like Shout Factory and stuff like that are revitalizing these films. Is it more difficult to kind of get a hold of these trailers now that things are getting Blu-ray releases and DVD releases?
No, it's actually it's become easier to get most of the trailers, but even on YouTube, I mean, God knows, there's every trailer and his mother is up on YouTube now from some source or other, because people can just download what oh, I got something, I'll download it. We live in a remarkable time. The movies that we used to stay up late and watch when I was a kid, and if you didn't watch it at 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday, you weren't going to see it again for another year maybe,
right.
And so you better try to stay awake.
Yep.
All those movies are now readily available. I mean, there are more movies available now to see on DVD than there have ever been in the history of movies. But the weird thing is that when we were growing up, we were so immersed in the culture of these movies that we knew all these things. We knew all these pictures. We knew all these filmmakers and actors. And you turned on the TV and there they were. You flipped the channel and there they were. Well, that world is gone. That doesn't happen anymore. Now there's only one place or two places in the whole cable spectrum to see some of these pictures, particularly the black and white ones. And one of the things that we were hoping to do with the site is to bring back some of these pictures into the public consciousness that just have fallen through the cracks. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how can you find it? You can't even now anymore, for the most part, go to a video store, because these video stores are all closing.
Yep.
You can't look at the boxes. You can't ultimately, go to the library and say, what is this book? I want to see. It's going to all be electronic, and you're going to have to download it from a list of things. Well, now who's going to tell you what that list is, and who's going to tell you what those movies are like? So well,
there you
that's
go.
it.
There you go.
You're going to need people are going to need guidance, and they're going to need to be steered toward things that they might enjoy that they didn't know existed, and that's been one of the benefits of the site is that it has done that for a lot of people.
What a fantastic service for the era that we're living in, where everyone is so fast and needs things. That's perfect. They've got their favorite directors telling them what movie to watch. Yeah. That's such a great idea. Excellent. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for stopping in.
Thank you.
Speaking of some great films, we actually have one more trailer from hell, or one of several. I think we have about 1,000 more.
Coming from hell.
About
They're
1,000.
just like popping up.
I opened a
everywhere.
gate earlier, and they're all flooding through. They're all coming through. We actually have one that you mentioned, Edgar Wright, talking about corruption, which is fantastic. So let's take a look at that right now.
I'm Edgar Wright, and we're here at Trailers from Hell. And today, we're looking at a very startling film. The 1967 thriller, Corruption, starring Peter Cushing and Sue Lloyd. It is very, very scary. I'm not going to say that Corruption is one of the greatest thrillers of all time, because it isn't, but this is a pretty great trailer. I saw this trailer before I saw the film, and this is another trailer that influenced my Don't trailer for Grindhouse, particularly in the use of graphics. Check out the dolls. Straight away, you're straight into all the cliches of horror. And strangely, in the finished film, those dolls are actually in a prostitute's flat, and it's not entirely clear why she would have a collection of creepy dolls. I like the voiceover guy here when he goes, "Run!" He goes slightly high-pitched. There's some odd choices in the voiceover on this. There's a bit later on where will the bodies turn up next? In a valise? Which always makes me laugh. I don't know why they said valise instead of suitcase. As you can see from the editing on this, it's a pretty sort of like, it's a thriller that takes place in the swinging 60s kind of setting, and was pretty controversial at the time. It's actually pretty explicit, the finished film. It's basically a rip-off of like Eyes Without a Face, a very similar plot line where Cushing is a surgeon who's trying to save his girlfriend's face that's been scarred in an accident. Look at that. That just gives you nightmares. For some reason, they have their very own lurch in the film, and there's this heavy called Grover, who's retarded and chews apples like with an open mouth, which is enough to give you nightmares. Here we go. In a valise. I love it. In a deep freeze. Whoever the voiceover guy is, he deserved the Academy Award. Now, this is brilliant. No woman will dare go home alone after seeing Corruption. Therefore. I love the fact that they chose the whole screen to put therefore in huge graphics. Now the thing here, no one will be admitted alone to see Corruption. What they haven't thought about is, would any woman on their own want to see fucking Corruption? I don't think there's any woman who's going to go and see it alone anyway. So that kind of whole ploy doesn't really work. This ending is just mental. What I love about this is that they've found every single way to make the graphics look really intense, and then they go even further with this at the end. Corruption!
So great.
Suggested for mature audiences, though. I think that lets us
believe
know.
just before the rating system.
That
Edgar is irrepressible.
Now, have you cut together trailers for your own films? I'm sure you probably did.
I had to when I was working at Corman's. I had to cut the trailer for Hollywood Boulevard, which was very, very difficult. I discovered that the one thing you really don't want to do is cut your own trailer, because there's so many things that you don't want to show. Oh, you can't give away that. Oh, no, this is a good joke. I don't want to give that away. And whereas other directors were really pissed at me at Corman's, because for Big Bad Mama, which is a picture that Steve Carver directed with Angie Dickinson, I did a trailer that was 5 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
It had every bit of nudity in the picture, every piece of violence. And it was too long. I mean, it was just a bad trailer, and he was really pissed at me. He said, "You gave away everything." You know.
So, how do you feel about giving up control of your trailers to another?
Well, you'd
have
to do that anyway. I mean, look, I used to cut my own movies. I used to edit my own movies, and when I started working for studios, they said, "Look, you don't cut your own movie. That's just too much control. You have an editor that hopefully we can get behind your back to do what we want." So you really don't do that. But great, the Sam Fuller, people like that, always cut their own trailers, their own pictures.
Are there any trailers for your own films that you just absolutely can't stand? All cards on the table. We could talk
trailers
now.
for my movies?
For your films, yeah.
I don't really remember the trailers that well. I remember the movies that didn't make money, and I remember it must be because the trailers. Certainly not the movie.
Of course.
It was more the campaigns. I mean, I had a picture called Explorers, and they had a campaign for it. It looked like tar paper on blue ink.
Oh no!
And it was a bicycle next to a garbage can, and there was a fence and a light behind it.
Totally
That
explains
was
the
it.
whole movie.
It was like, what is this? And when they put it up on fences and stuff, it just looked like tar paper. But you look, you make the movie's your baby. You throw it up in the air, you hope somebody catches it, because you can't hold on to it forever. You have custody of it for a little while you're working on it, and then when you think it's done, you send it out in the world, and what happens, happens.
So you've come to terms with letting go.
You have to.
Well, most of your movies have so many dimensions to them as far as like being scary and funny, and there's drama, there's political commentary in some of your films, like your Masters of Horror. So how do you feel like you've been presented to the world as a filmmaker through other people's trailers that they've cut for you?
I don't know that filmmakers are presented by the trailers. I think the business is affected by the trailers, but I think the movies pretty much speak to themselves, and I've been lucky. I've been able to, for the most part, do the kind of movies I wanted. I mean, I was a big James Well fan when I was a kid, and I loved the fact that a horror movie could suddenly have something funny in it, and then something disturbing, and then while you were off balance, you could be hit with something else. And you take all those lessons to heart. The movies that when I started directing, I didn't realize I had so many images in my head that I had seen in other people's movies. And now, sometimes when I go back and look at my own pictures, or I see another film that I haven't seen for years, I go, "Oh my God, I stole that from this." That's where that came from. You just don't know. It's just all up there rattling around.
Is there one of your films that you feel was maybe mismarketed as far as, I mean, you just mentioned the one.
Well, Explorers was certainly mismarketed. It opened on the day of the Live Aid concert when nobody went to the movies.
Yeah.
That was not a good idea, and they made us stop work in the middle of the picture so that we could get that date. And Inner Space, which is a picture I like, had a really lousy print campaign. It was just a big thumb with a little tiny pod on it, which I guess you were supposed, and you couldn't tell it was a comedy, and it was just, it didn't make any money, and now it's very popular on video, but at the time, you couldn't get people in the theater.
Now, looking at the flip side of that, why would you say Gremlins was so successful in terms of marketing?
It was a good campaign because it looked like E.T. and it had the same colors as E.T. and people thought, oh, it's just like E.T. And then, it was E.T. with teeth. Luckily, it was the right movie at the right time. I mean, the same movie could have come out a year earlier or a year later and done nothing. But you just never know. It's such a crapshoot.
Well, I think we actually have one more trailer. With that, I'm gonna bring you one more trailer from hell. We've got one more. I'm gonna do it.
One made
I'm gonna do
through?
it. One more.
I tried to close
We
that
actually
gate.
have Eli Roth talking about Creepshow, which, as you know, I'm a comic book nerd.
You are?
And Creepshow.
I love it when you talk nerdy to me.
I know. Creepshow is actually one of the closest to comic books. Actually, I'm gonna let Eli Roth tell it because EC is one of my favorites.
Let's check it out.
Take a look.
Welcome to Trailers from Hell. Today we're going to watch a trailer for one of my favorite George Romero films, and a film that I think is sadly very overlooked and I think underappreciated, and that is the great Creepshow. Creepshow is one of my favorite films of all time. I remember when this movie came out, it was such a big deal because you were combining Stephen King and George Romero and Tom Savini. And Savini had done, of course, the effects on Friday the 13th and The Prowler and Dawn of the Dead. And, Romero, of course, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. And Stephen King at the time, it was The Shining and Carrie. I mean, these were the three biggest names in horror, all coming together to make this film, and they wanted to make an adaptation of the old EC comics, and they really, really did it. I mean, this is one of the first films that really, really took the look and feel and style of a comic book and completely replicated it. And this was one of the first times that Romero got a real budget to make a film, and you can see that the design in the film is so spectacular. I think one of the only films that's ever kind of matched it is Sin City. That's really the only film you can compare it to. This film was fun, it was genuinely scary, it was genuinely funny, it was totally disgusting, and this was really one of the first times that Romero got to work with an all-star cast. He'd always had great actors before in his films, but here he had E.G. Marshall and Hal Holbrook and Adrian Barbeau and Vivica Linford. You'll see Leslie Nielsen, Ed Harris with hair, Ted Danson with hair. It's a terrific film and just a great, great sleepover movie, so you should absolutely rent it.
Great
Scary.
stuff. Scary stuff. And a little
Yeah.
reference to EC Comics in there. I love it. Love me some comic references. Now I have to ask, we're talking trailers, we're talking older trailers. In the past 5 years, I mean, this is the time for marketing right now. I mean, they are marketing out the wazoo in films because it's pretty difficult to get people to sit down for 2 hours, let's face it. Do you have a trailer in the past 5 years that you really, or more than one, that you really enjoyed?
Well, the thing about the trailers, it's hard to pick one because most pictures have more than one trailer. Now they have, in addition to the green bands and the red bands and all that kind of stuff, they actually don't just do a trailer and say, okay, that's it. You know, they say, well, we got to hit this market and this market and this market, and they do a whole bunch of different trailers. So, and sometimes depending on what part of the country you live in, you see a different trailer. So it's, I can tell you the pictures that I liked. I just saw The Source Code, which I think is a terrific picture by Duncan Jones, whose Moon was also a terrific picture.
Yeah.
I think he's got a big career going. And I mean, there are certain directors that I like Guillermo. I always wait for his next picture. Edgar Wright, I think, is a really talented guy, and I think that in years to come, people will look back at Scott Pilgrim and they will find a very influential film in a way that was not noticed, apparently, by a lot of people at the time. And even a movie as bad as Speed Racer, which is a really bad movie, has some brilliant things in it. I mean, there's some really innovative storytelling going on in the service of no story. But you know, anytime you have to cut to the monkey and the kid, you know, it just,
you gotta have Joel Silver on talking about trailers from hell. That would be interesting.
Yeah, Joel would be great.
Definitely, definitely.
Are there any film trailers that you've seen that stand out, but that you haven't yet been able to watch the movie?
I haven't been able to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Bad ones.
Yeah, that's what we like to talk about.
In a word, no.
Well, there you go.
There it is. There it is. A definitive answer. Axel, well, we've got some awesome questions for you coming up in a bit. I wanted to thank you for talking trailers with us.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to be attending Monsterpalooza this weekend, is that correct?
Monsterpalooza.
Monsterpalooza, the Art of Monsters, that is happening this weekend.
In fact, next week's Trailers from Hell are devoted to Monsterpalooza.
Really?
It's a week of Monsterpalooza on Trailers from Hell.
Wow, look at that. You heard it here. You heard it here
this is
first.
This is a scoop.
We had a scoop. Scoop in the house, everybody. It's happening next week. It's going to be at the Marriott Burbank Convention Center. 200 vendors.
Wow.
Lots of folks are going to be there.
We'll be there.
We will be there. So if you see Staci or myself, please don't approach us. No, I'm kidding. Come up and talk to us. I will gladly sign anything and say that Staci, it's actually her name, because I'm sure you're going to want her more than me. And the creator of the original Godzilla himself, and I'm going to butcher this name, unfortunately, Haro Nakajima.
I think that's right.
Did I do it right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. He will be in person, and it'll be a great show.
And he's the real guy.
The original.
The original guy.
Does he
Who's
look
in
like
the suit.
Oh, he's in the suit. He
No,
doesn't
he's
actually
not
look
in the
like
suit.
Godzilla.
He's not going to be in the suit.
Okay,
So
all right.
Don't look for Godzilla. You won't see him. You'll see there's a little man with his kind of old, and that's him.
But he will be there. He will definitely be there. And there's also a Howling reunion going on. Is that
There
correct?
is, which I am a part of, as it turns out.
Look at that.
I'm in the Howling Reunion panel and the Grindhouse panel, which I think is right afterward.
The American Grindhouse panel.
American Grindhouse,
Ah,
yes, because
very
I'm
cool.
in that, along with everybody else I know.
It's just a big old get-together. It's like a picnic indoors. It's just fun.
Just
Everybody
throw
gets
a
together.
tablecloth out on the floor.
Signs a few glossies. Excellent. So you will be there in attendance and talking about Howling and American Grindhouse and all your favorite films. And we'll get a Monsterpalooza week next week. I'm kind of looking forward to
It's
that.
actually this week.
This
I
week?
think it started on Monday.
Which
Really?
would be yesterday.
Wow,
or today
we're
if you're
late.
watching us live. Depending on if you're watching us live or not. So let's talk the future. We've been talking the past. I want to talk the future. Tell me about Monster Love. You're attached to this film called Monster Love. What can you tell me about it?
Monster Love is a Romeo and Juliet with vampires and werewolves story, which is probably, I hope, going to be made soon. One of the things that you have to do when you, in today's world, is that you have more than one project at a time. And so you sort of juggle them and you balance them out and you try to get them funded and you try to get them cast and you try all that stuff. And so Monster Love is a project that is written by Greg Pak, who writes for Marvel. And it's a wonderful project. It's one of 5, at least, projects that I've got that I'm trying to get made. And it seems to be among the ones that's closest to happening.
Well, we've been looking forward to seeing The Hole for a long time, and I know that it's been released overseas in some territories, but when do we get to see it?
Well, golly gee, I wish I knew. If you lived in England, you could have seen it.
If
you lived in Italy, if you lived in India, if you lived in Russia, you would have seen it already in 3D. But here, because of machinations that are far beyond my poor ability to fathom, it still hasn't come out. It is, however, available on DVD from Europe if you have Amazon.co.uk, whatever.
I've actually seen the film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I really definitely enjoyed it.
But you didn't even see it in 3D.
I didn't get to see it in 3D.
It's only 1/3 as good.
Yeah, 1/3. I think that math works out. That math makes sense. I'm gonna go with it. Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate that we haven't gotten to see it in American theaters yet, because I mean, we're now in this 3D world where these massive movies get made in 3D after the fact. But your film was actually done.
My movie was made the old-fashioned way. It was actually shot in 3D.
Yeah,
wow.
The real way.
We didn't push any buttons later.
That's such a novelty.
Yeah, crazy how that happens. So soon, basically, we will.
I hope so. In my lifetime, certainly, I hope.
Well, I definitely say if you can go online and get it on the internet over in UK and order the DVD here, go and get it, because it's definitely a great film, and it's classic Joe Dante. It really is. I mean,
it doesn't have any zooms in it.
No zooms.
No burb zooms.
But it's got tough
people
kids.
here are very, very, very happy about the burb zoom scene.
There it is. Look at that. Yeah, we managed to get that in there.
I'll never live it down to my dying day.
Our producer has definitely made sure we squeeze that in
Filmmaker Joe
there.
Dante passes away today. Here's a clip of his most famous scene. Film technique at its finest.
So you can't do that in 3D? Is it too
I
alarming?
wouldn't even want to think about doing that in 3D.
That's true. Heads might start popping off like in Matinee. They just start exploding in the theater. Excellent, Joe. Well, thank you for joining us so much. We will definitely be seeing you at Monsterpalooza, and we're looking forward to watching all of the trailers from hell on the interwebs.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
And us.
Yes, thank you for having us. You and Elizabeth, thank you so much. And they can find you on Twitter at Joe_Dante. Is that correct?
That's what they tell me.
That's what they say. So yes. And
it must be true.
It must be true. They can also find you on Twitter. Is that correct?
Yes, but there is no underscore. I'm not underscored at all.
They can find you at Staci Wilson, right?
That's it.
You can find me at Matt Robb. That just about does it for our show today. I have to tell you, go and subscribe to us on iTunes. If you like the show and you're watching the show on YouTube, stop and go over to iTunes and continue to watch the show, because that's where we know you really want to watch the show.
That's where the cool place is.
Exactly. We're not sending you anything bad. We just want you to watch and comment. Tell us what you like. Say, I love Staci, but you can get rid of that Matt guy. It's all right. I know.
And he's got a cool shirt.
It's totally all right. So it works out. Make sure you definitely check us out on there. Until next week, Staci.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Will the table be back?
I don't know.
The table will not be back.
No.
It's gone again, everybody. It's gone again.
But we do have the Jesus candle.
Yes,
so
we
we're
made
all
sure to
good.
get the Jesus candle.
Votive.
Of course. Until next week, we take it out with one of ours, and I believe your favorite clips from Trailers from Hell. It's the giant claw.
Well, you can't. They don't come any better than the giant claw.
There it is. Until next week, take care, guys.
Hi, I'm Joe Dante. This is Trailers from Hell. In the annals of 1950s science fiction movies, there's one that stands out. Not because it's particularly good. It's not even really particularly bad. But what it does have is it has the all-time dumbest 50s monster. The name of the picture is The Giant Claw, and to a number of people, it is a comedy classic. Well, this is a ballsy trailer. In 1957, the posters and print ads for this hid the fact that the monster in this otherwise routine 50s cheapie is one of the most hilariously silly of any era. But here's the Columbia Trailer Department going for broke and using as much monster footage as possible, as if somehow this stuff was as good as Ray Harryhausen. In fact, had Harryhausen done the effects, he turned it down, this would have been considered a fairly standard mid-level B-picture, with an emblematic 50s sci-fi cast. But the ever-parsimonious producer Sam Katzman, nicknamed Jungle Sam for his prolific history of serials and cut-rate action pictures, made a deal for the effects to be done on the cheap in Mexico. It's not that the puppet they came up with is technically that bad. It's articulated and has a kind of cartoon personality that recalls Bob Clampett's Beaky Buzzard. In fact, I remember feeling kind of sad when its egg was destroyed. But it's so goofily designed that it reduces everything around it to cartoon level.
Atomic hydrogen weapons, capable of wiping cities, countries off the face of the earth, are completely ineffective against this creature from the sky.
I swiped a whole scene from this, word for word, in Mant, the movie within a movie in Matinee. Guns, cannons, rockets, it's just a bird. And it was a staple ingredient of the movie orgy.
There it is now.
attacking the United Nations building.
I met Jeff Morrow in 1978 for the part of the General in Piranha, but he was a bit too frail by then. He told me that during production the cast had been assured that the effects were going to be terrific, and they all duly reacted as if they were seeing something really scary. But when Morrow saw the picture at the opening, the laughter was so explosive, he snuck out of the theater. And for generations, people have been laughing at this picture. And when you look at this monster, what can I tell you? Even the video box for this says, here's a movie that's literally a turkey.